Billy here. I need to address something that I keep seeing in the internets and commentariat and news stories and sites and magazines and some people that I speak to. They say, well, I'll just go to this. This is a Zero Hedge article called The Multipolar World Order. This is part 2. I didn't read part 1. I don't need to. I've read part 2 and I see where they're going with this. And part 3 is, I haven't seen it either. This was published a while ago. Part 3 is probably out. This is the 29th. Okay, it might not be out. I got to find part 3 if and when it comes out. When it comes out. I don't know how to describe this. This is a viewpoint that, well, Putin's really for the New World Order too. Putin is working for the Great Reset, and so's Trump. They all are. Everybody's on board with the Great Reset. There isn't anybody fighting it. Really? This war and all these great shakings and quakings are just theater. It's just to trick us and to go along with it. That's what the gist of this stuff is. It's ridiculous. It really is. If they had that much power and that much unity, they just do it. They just put it in. They don't have to have a war and a fake war. Some people are still calling it a fake war. Well, I suggest you go over there and look at it for yourself and see how fake it is. I have friends, people I know personally and know very well and have spent a lot of time with who are there on the front lines. It's not fake. I've met refugees for years. Back, well, the war didn't start in February 24th, my birthday. It started a long time before that, 8 freaking years. I have met refugees in my kitchen of my erstwhile home in Sevastopol from Lugansk and Donetsk. My children's singing teacher was from Donetsk. Some of their friends that went to school with them were refugees that came over to escape the war. It isn't just staged to get us into Klaus Schwab's New World Order. There is an opposition to the New World Order, and it's national in some cases. Now, I've read this article, and I was gonna go through it point by point, but that'd just be too freaking tedious, and some of this stuff is obvious. I need to say, this will foobar the whole philosophy behind this is nation states are made of factions. Any huge organization like a nation state has factions. They're not monolithic structures where everyone's marching in lockstep like they like to portray the Russians and the Chinese, with Putin as the dictator and he's calling the shots. They always make out like that's what's behind stuff. It's stupid. It's childish. It's thinking of a 2-year-old. It's cartoonish. And so many people have a cartoonish image of how the world works. It's all factions. Iran has factions. North Korea even has factions. Russia certainly has factions. Russia is more federated than the United States. The Russian Constitution is a federal republic. The United States is supposed to have been a federal republic, but it's been subverted by the federal government. It's not so federal anymore. The federal government runs roughshod over the states and cities. In Russia, they don't do that. Regions, oblasts, districts, they have some sovereignty. They can resist the federal government quite effectively. And they have factions. They have different people that control different areas. In some places, the globalists are in charge. There were places that implemented QR codes. And these idiots saw that as, well, that's evidence that they're just doing the same thing. Russia's no different than anybody else. They're all on the same page. They're all globalists. There's factions. You have a small, localized battles all over between the globalists and the anti-globalists, the traditionalists. Let's call the globalists cultists, because that's what they are. Well, that's another thing where they have evidence that it's all just kabaki theater. You see Klaus Schwab and others, especially Klaus, though. I'm going to show you this. It's funny. I don't know if you can see that. I got to take my damn camera off to zoom in. He dresses funny, doesn't he? Or his mother dresses him funny? I think he was hatched. He's doing that on purpose? He's trying to freak us out? What's the deal? There's this little thing here. What if they're putting on a show and certain people have been assigned to play certain roles, and some people have been assigned to play the villains? The villains, the jesters, the foils, the idiots like Biden, or the villains, the arch villain like Dr. Evil Klaus Schwab. He's wearing in that picture. He's wearing this Star Trek looking thing. He's dressed like a James Bond villain. Isn't that the natural course of action if we assume the political marriage between Hollywood showmanship and Hegelian dialectics? Yes, there is Hegelian dialectics. It's thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. There is that. They do think like that. It's their primary operating philosophy. And there is costume and there is symbolism because they're a cult. The billionaire techno-oligarchic club are transhumanists. They believe that they own the planet, that they're the managers of the planet. They're the light workers that can shape evolution. They believe this. It's a cult. They do have weird ways of dressing. They're ultra modern. Yeah, they do that. That doesn't mean it's not real. It's not a costume just to make you think he's a villain so that they can have the villains and the heroes. Klaus Schwab against Vladimir Putin. Klaus Schwab against Donald Trump. It's all theater. Now they control everything and they're trying to fool you. If they controlled everything, they wouldn't have to fool you. This is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous standpoint and position to take. They are a cult and they are fucking weird. They do stuff like that. They're not like you and me. They don't hang out with us. They don't go four-wheeling. They don't go hunting. You won't see them show up at TGI Fridays. They stay in their own little circles. They have their own masturbatoriums where they all interact with each other and not with the, hopefully, not with the common people. They don't get any feedback loop. Yeah, and they get weird and they dress funny and they have really strange ideas. They are villains. He's not portraying one to manipulate you. Sometimes you would think that. One of the World Economic Forum meetings, they had a pamphlet, and I can't find it anywhere. I think they're scrubbing it because they found out, oh, we can't let people say this. Because they are trying to convince you. They've got a lot of dupes that just want to be entertained and taken care of that'll go along with the smart cities and, the chips and everything. They think that's wonderful. It'll solve crime, and I won't ever have to think again. You know people like that. You probably got some neighbors like that, and they're the ones that drop a dime on you for not wearing a mask. There's a lot of people like that. It's all about who can do what to who, and there are factions everywhere. In your city there's factions. In the Russian government there's factions. In China there's factions. What factions are winning in what areas determine a lot of the geopolitical shuffle. People switch sides. Well, nations switch sides. Turkey's the biggest example for that. It always has been since the Ottoman Empire was broken. Well, since Ataturk died, they've been up for grabs all the time. It's shifting from one side to the other. And a lot of it's external pressure. Erdogan is always worried because Fethullah Gulen is kept in reserve and held over his head like the sword of Damocles. If Erdogan screws up too bad, they're going to put Gulen in there. Gulen's at a compound in the Poconos in northeastern Pennsylvania. I've been in the area. It's beautiful. There's a lot of weird stuff in the Poconos, but Fethullah Gulen has his own compound there, and the Secret Service at your expense is protecting him and taking care of him, and probably giving him grants and money, because he's kept there so he can be shoved in when Erdogan gets too too far off the reservation. Same thing was done with the Shah of Iran. Ayatollah was kept at our expense in Paris in exile, so he could be brought in to take over if the Shah screwed up. The Shah was put in when the last democratically elected normal leader of Iran was assassinated by the CIA in the 50s. This isn't stuff I'm making up. This isn't something from the National Enquirer. You could look in the government archives and see it. In the Freedom of Information Act, you can see official documents that were released. The CIA assassinated the last elected, peaceful, balanced leader of Iran simply because Royal Dutch Shell and British Petroleum and Standard Oil wanted those oil reserves. They wanted them really cheap. They wanted a puppet in there to give them away to them. But the last elected leader of Iran was using the money to benefit his country and his people. We can't have that now, can we? Do you know how things work? And I read these articles like these Zero Hedge guys. Zero Hedge is pretty good a lot of times, but then they have this stuff. This is by Tyler Durden. Okay, Tyler Durden believes that they have so much control and they're so monolithic and solid a structure in the globalist and the Great Reset crowd and the New World Order crowd that they can have theater, they can pose, they can orchestrate this show with these wars and these struggles and everything in order to bring you and trick you into the New World Order. That's some serious ass clownery there, Durden. The struggle's real. I've been in the inner sanctum of some of the traditionalists, multipolarists, thinkers, and I am personal friends with a few of them. They're real. They're not secretly working for Klaus Schwab. Why would they be? This is insanity. Let me look at some more of this stuff. There's several things I want to address on this. If you saw my last video, you could see about some of the media that you're seeing, some of the things that are coming out that you see in the news and even the alternative news that are not necessarily particularly made for your consumption. There's lots of information war. Information war is the same as actual physical on the ground war. There's probes, there's test balloons, there's probing, and there's demonstrations. We can do this, so you screw around and find out. Look, we'll show you. Boom, look, we did that. You understand? It's going to save a lot of lives and keep you from making mistakes. And then there's probes. Can we do this? Will they take this? What'll they do if we do this? And the same thing for information war. You see a lot of stuff in the media like that, and you can speculate and figure it out. But the wrong answer is they're all in on it. They're all in on it. Everything's a psyop. You got to be insane to believe that. If they had that much control, why would they bother to do that to fool you? Yeah, they're pretty weird, and they like to brag, and they like to torture their victims before they kill them, kind of like a mean cat. But that's not what's happening. To believe that there's only evil and no good, and good is completely powerless. In Orthodoxy, there's a power that is in the world that is a secular power. It's Behemoth that fights Leviathan. There's a secular power of the people that is a force for good in the world. And sometimes it's not what you think it'll be. Sometimes, well, the people that insist on corrupting their doctrines and going in rebellion against God, they get hauled off to Babylon. The people that hauled them off were acting on God's behalf, because that's what he wanted to happen. They might not be Christian, they might not be even very good, it might be totally self-interested, but they're allowed to do something because God allowed them to do it. There is a force for good that stands up for what's right, for justice. It might not have a Christian label. It might be Muslim, but they stand up for decency. They stand up against transgender children being cultivated, or all these horrifying places they want to take us, chipping people and changing their DNA and changing their nature to make them into servos. Yeah, there's Muslims that stand up against that. They stand up against injustice. And they're my brothers as far as I'm concerned. Hezbollah, they've been a pretty good force for good in the Middle East. Israel hasn't. They haven't been a force for good at all. And I look around and see all these people, I stand with Israel forever. They're God's chosen people. Holy crap. You need to get your mind right. Maybe a lack of communication. A failure to communicate. I'm trying to communicate so you can get your mind right. Now, my subscribers don't need any of this. They know. But it's encouraging. It's nice. And it's something you can share with people that need to hear it. It's not a monolithic structure. It's not absolute dominion of evil just having some sort of ritual theater before they take over. You know, if they had that kind of power, they'd take over. There wouldn't be screwing around with something that could go wrong. There's a fight. The fight is real. The sides aren't equivalent. These people have come out with these equivalencies. They're posing themselves as being so intellectual, they see through this black and white stuff because they're so sophisticated. It's all, well, he said some things and they said some things. Well, you're both wrong because, you know, the truth is somewhere in the middle. No. It's a pose. It's a pseudo-intellectual pose. Should I go through this piece by piece? The evidence that they present is mainly the globalists like Stoltz and Lagarde and all these others. Well, they're making statements about, oh, there's a new multipolar world. You don't think that they would know they're losing and start giving lip service and backwalking and positioning themselves where they can try to hang on to power and where they can try to mitigate damage and hedge their bets and try to get their way wormed into the multipolar world, whatever part of it that they can be in, and start spinning their webs there and salvage what they want, where they have a position to start working again and not just be completely obliterated. Of course they're going to do that. But this is seen as evidence that it's not real because, you know, the globalists are talking about a new world, a new multipolar world, so the multipolar world must be fake. That's a pretty stupid way of looking at this kind of evidence, though. Come on. Mr. Durr. What was that name again? Well, that has nothing to do with it. Tyler Durden, Mr. Durden. And he's not the only one. There's a whole bunch of them trying to pull this crap. A final example, I'm just scrolling down. Speaking of the White House Business Convention in March 2022. Oh, that's another thing. This is like the verses in the Quran. The newer ones abrogate the older ones. These quotes from these globalists that are embracing multipolarism, they're pretty freaking recent. They weren't saying that before Russia started winning. They weren't saying that before Syria turned and all these probes got broken off and all these demonstrations showed them they better quit screwing around. They might screw around anyway, though. But in 2022, March 21st, President Biden's people, Biden might as well just be a mechanical speaker that you put up there and have somebody else talk through, but whatever. He said, we're at an inflection point. It sounds like Obama, doesn't it? Let me be clear. We are at an inflection point. Inflection? Really? I believe in the world economy. Intelligible, unintelligible. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations. Okay, and then blah, 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 we go on. Now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it, and we've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it. That doesn't sound like multipolarism to me. You want to be chief among the various nations and you get to call the shots. That's the same as having just one nation, right? What's going on? Why would the architects of the unipolar hegemony obligingly accept being replaced by multipolarity? That's what he got out of that sentence? Really? Biden said, now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there. Well, that's what Klaus Schwab says. And we're going to lead it. And we've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it. You're either with us or against us. Okay. Mr. Dearden gets, why would the architects of unipolar hegemony accept being replaced by multipolarity? And the offer to help make the transition. This is just really bad logic. Again, they're positing themselves as superior intellectuals that see they're both wrong. There is no right or wrong. There is no big battle going on. It's all a psyop. Don't buy it. There's different people that have different motives for this. I had a person that I friended on Facebook that was posting some comics of Ukrainians that were, pretty decent. The early ones were. As time went on, they got worse. They're still on the right page, but then she started posting this stuff, these long screeds that I recognize from the structures from some Marxist-Leninist, highly educated Marxist-Leninist, probably a professor somewhere. I know the guy's name, I just never dug up because I don't have to. I recognize that stuff. And they're saying, Putin's on their side. This is a trick. Putin's not really for us. Putin would have saved the Donbass 10 years or 8 years ago if he was really on our side. He let those people die. And they start trying to dig in there and stick their levers in so they can pry the coalition apart. Why would you do that? And it goes on and on. It gets worse and worse and worse. And their evidence, this was like this Zero Hedge article. And what are these people's problems? A lot of it is there are an awful lot of communists in the United States and in England especially, and they're old school Marxist-Leninists. They didn't go along with all this stupid identity politics, identity grievance porn that the new left does. They stayed to their original principles, and they're horrified what passes as communism now in the United States, but they're still Marxist-Leninists. And they're very educated, very well educated. And they saw the Donbass, they saw the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics because they call themselves People's Republics. Oh, it's finally happening! Yes! And they expected Putin to declare a People's Republic in Russia and go in and rescue them, and a new Soviet Union to be born, and a new hope for humanity. That's how they think. And they were butthurt because that didn't happen, and now they're coming out, and they got their sour grapes. They don't like the way things are going. Just because they call themselves People's Republic doesn't mean they're 1960s Marxist-Leninists. They're very orthodox and very traditional and very into private property. But as a People's Republic, they limit. They put strict constraints on corporations and billionaires and don't let them enslave the common people. And they have a tradition of communism, but it's changed. It's not 1960s Marxist-Leninism. It certainly isn't Trotskyism or Brezhnevism or anything else. But you got all these butthurt communists that want to throw poop now because it's not turning out the way they thought it was. And I reckon I've gone round and around with people like that. I recognize the way they write. Don't waste your time with them. Tweak them, break their chops, pull their nose, blow in their face. Don't sit there and engage because you can't win. Not because they have facts, it's because they have a real queer way of arguing. They'll have a screed that's like 4 pages long, and every point has like 10 different facets, and they arrange it in such a way that they can change the context anytime. And you start engaging them, you start talking about certain points, then they shift the facets around. If you deal with this and logically prove that this isn't valid, they say, oh, well, they'll shift and act like you were talking about a different facet of it. That's why they do. They construct their arguments in that way. They're trained to. That way they always win by fooling you, by being intellectually dishonest. They're going to win over the masses, and defeat the class enemies and bring in utopia. Because they're atheists. The Donbass People's Republics are not atheists. They believe in truth. They believe in logos. They believe in private property. Just because they call themselves a People's Republic doesn't mean they're communist. If they call themselves communists, I don't care. That's not 60s Marxist-Leninism. Hell, China isn't. The Chinese Communist Party isn't even much of that anymore. And they're a faction. And the Chinese government is a different faction than the Chinese Communist Party. Russia still has a lot of communists. They're usually old people that are very nostalgic. They have youth groups, but they're more like the People's Republics. They're usually orthodox. They call themselves communists because they're anti-globalists. Americans get the heebie-jeebies when you say communism or socialism, or even if you mention controls on capital or controls on oligarchy, controls on corporations. That's socialism. It doesn't work. It kills people. You got your Charlie Kirks and Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro. Socialism kills. Capitalism is good. No, it's not. Unrestrained capitalism doesn't have morals. It's all about the bottom line. You have a corporation that doesn't have morals because it's not a human being, and there's no physical location where you can go get them if they destroy your life. Especially the digital stuff. There has to be constraints, but you have all these ass clowns that call any mention of constraints, they accuse you of being a socialist and being Mao Zedong or Pol Pot. Because they're idiots. Don't fall for that. This right-left thing is just so over. We're so beyond that. It's way beyond left and right. It's between logos, tradition, sovereignty of the individual, respect for real human rights on a ground level, and then there's mouth play to that. That is the new Great Reset. We will own nothing and be happy. Technocratic managerial oligarchy with absolute control over everything. You won't be able to pick up a stick and carve a spoon out of it without it being registered and chipped and paying somebody for it. You will be changed. They will change your DNA, they'll change your makeup, and they'll re-engineer humanity to serve them. It'll be nothing but servos. That's what they plan. And Putin talks about this. Is this Kabaki theater? He's really on their side? What would be the purpose of that? These arguments are just stupid, but they keep coming up in prestigious magazines and places and people that should know better. Anyway, that's enough of that. This is getting too long. May address it some more. I'll read this damn thing again, but it's just depressing that such people could get published under their own name and got paid for it. It's just drivel. It's just stupid. There's a lot of people that are way better than that aren't getting paid anything. As a matter of fact, they get censored. But, let you know you're on the right side. Anyway, that's enough of this. Uncle Billy signing out.